What do you associate with the fall season? Whether it's the lights and costumes of Halloween or the gentle breeze and falling leaves, you already know the drill. I gave you the task of translating your favorite thing about the autumn season into a Fakemon design that I would then feature and perhaps even redesign on my channel for the 5th consecutive season, over a year now. Once again, I was blown away by the staggering amount of quality submissions, nearly 30 from my viewers over on my community Discord. Kudos to all of you for coming up with creative designs, especially given the constraint that I asked for, regional forms of some beloved pre-existing Pokemon. So I took a stab at redesigning the ones that I felt most needed a few tweaks to make them look more like the official Pokemon art, whether that was a digital rendering or maybe a clearer expression of its concept. I also tried to lean towards designs that don't already have regional variants or alternate forms in the franchise to shine some light on underrepresented bonds, but not in all cases. My main focus was providing varied redesigns to represent all aspects of fall, so don't expect more than one Halloween Pokemon, more than one pumpkin Pokemon, and so on. Each selected entry is wildly different from the next. Keep in mind that I'm still a burgeoning artist myself, so this is not an attempt at showcasing official-looking Fakemon art. Far from it. It's just a way to celebrate our collective artistic journey, and what I've personally learned along the way. So let's jump right into the fall season and see what you all came up with. Kicking things off, let's take a look at a pretty universal symbol of the fall, the cornucopia, represented through Jock's variant of Shelmet. This horn-shaped container is perfect for storing or showcasing a bountiful harvest, so I love this clever variant of a Pokemon already known for hiding within a sturdy and distinct shell. This time, the shell is overflowing with symbols of the season, and Shelmet seems plenty more willing to share what it's collected. My design didn't change all too much, just giving it a more highly contrasting fall color palette with a few more colors, so it didn't look quite so muted. I also got rid of the patterns on the shell. I wanted to keep some, but I feel like it made a single stage Pokemon look too busy, made the shell look unrealistic, and removed a lot of emphasis from where it should be, the front of the design, which showcases Shelmet's bounty, some maple leaves and berries. I was a little on the fence about having the berries just be arranged in front of it, since I wanted this to look like a functional Pokemon and not fall decor. But it's only 2 berries, so I imagine this Pokemon just tucks them into its spacious shell when it's mobile or in battle, so I think it works. Plus the added maple leaf I gave it kind of looks like a mustache, and the top ones look like locks of hair to keep it warm. Hey, Movember is in the fall, right? Shelmet, the cornucopia Pokemon. In a particular region, there are no Carablast present to prey on Shelmet. Thus, the Shelmet have adapted to live a more relaxed lifestyle. Their shells are much softer, serving as a larder, and capable of expanding to store an entire bounty of fall leaves and berries that the Pokemon tirelessly seeks to gather. They consume these berries, especially during the colder winter months, to conserve and build up their energy as they prepare to evolve into a unique evolution yet to be described. Occasionally, they will share these berries with gentle woodland Pokemon such as Skwovet or Starly. In the event that the Pokemon they encounter aren't so friendly, the maple leaves that they collect serve as adequate camouflage. A common sight nestled at the base of tall oak trees in mountainous forests, these laid-back Pokemon are seen as true symbols of the fall season. This next redesign is fairly simple, but one of my favorites of the bunch. This Phantump from Tony G. It's apparently based on a combination of poisonwood trees and zombies, a great mix with some precedent in the Pokemon franchise through Paras and Parasect. A parasitic mushroom Pokemon overtaking another organism's mind or body is a classic horror trope, so I'm just happy to see one of these entries here. Not all too much needs to be redesigned, perhaps just digitizing it and adding a bit more differentiation from base Phantump. So what I did was gave the head a much more interesting shade of wood, to make it almost look sick and ghostly, like a zombie's lifeless complexion. And I also elongated the size of the mushroom, overtaking it to cover one of its eyes, like an eye patch, and made it roughly equal in size to Phantump's branch horn on the right side, to make it clear that the mushroom growth has replaced the horn and it's slowly covering all of Phantump. With a simple concept like this, I always love the opportunity to just go all out, and really emphasize the single concept at hand, no room for nuance. So a giant mushroom it is. Kudos to the original artist for such a strong base to work on, because it was pretty effortless on my part. Phantump, the Poisonwood Pokemon. These Phantump variants have the misfortune of being bound to stumps that are infected with a toxic fungus, which slowly overtakes Phantump, making it a much more reclusive and more aggressive Pokemon when stressed out as a defense mechanism. Phantump have little control over the fungus, similar to other infected Pokemon such as Paras, and they engage in behavior that ghost Pokemon wouldn't normally do, such as relying on rich nutrients and moisture, which serves to enhance the parasite rather than Phantump itself. Occasionally, this Pokemon will secrete and leave behind a trail of gooey toxins on trees and the forest floor, cluing hikers in on where in the forest these Pokemon dwell. Touching this slimy substance can lead directly to a rash that will last several hours. However, legends say that witches would collect the toxin, melting them down into a cauldron's brew for various purposes, due to their hypnotic qualities. Next up, let's turn to one of the most absolutely beautiful holidays there is, Dia de los Muertos, perfectly represented by Mage Queen's take on Gothitelle, a ghostly yet festive Pokemon inspired by the autumn time Mexican tradition, particularly the La Catrina archetype and illustration. The artist gave us a pretty simplified sketch that I think has all the necessary details. Frills on the dress, allusions to skull motifs, and autumnal flowers. So my design was focused on just taking all those given details to the max. I gave a clearer sense of dimension to the hat-like headdress, complete with multicolored flowers, a frilly body that works to allude to the flowers and the traditional details present in Dia de los Muertos outfits, and made certain that the face paid tribute to the ornamental decor of sugar skulls, with floral eyeliner, black markings, and a skull mouth. A Pokemon like this is a good lesson in the right amount of detail. Obviously, it had to be stripped down quite a lot from the highly detailed real-life Dia de los Muertos aesthetics, but I included just enough to allude to it, emphasizing detail on the face and leaving the dress rather plain, and also making sure that the level of detail wouldn't feel too cluttered by ensuring that the colors were perfectly complementary and harmonious to one another. That is the mark of an effective and realistic final stage evolutions design. Gothitelle, the Astral Body Pokemon. This regional variant of Gothitelle comes from a region with strong spiritual connections, imbuing the Pokemon with immense energy from another realm, particularly 1 week of the year, where its citizens celebrate and honor those who have passed to the afterlife. It's said that Gothitelle's body is comprised of the memories of those who have passed on, but are not forgotten by the living, each of its frills storing psychic and ghostly energy that it can wield in battle to cast fantastical visions, to frighten or immobilize opponents. However, these Pokemon prefer to use their powers for good, allowing people to commune with lost loved ones for a short time if Gothitelle is presented with a display known as an ofrenda, a collection of artifacts owned by the deceased, or a mix of vibrant autumn flowers and other harvested goods. This Pokemon would also sport a custom ability, Shadow Body. This makes the Pokemon either immune to Ghost and Dark-type moves and will activate when hit by one of either. When activated, the power of Gothitelle's Ghost or Dark-type moves is increased by 50%, so basically a spooky variant of Flash Fire. Now, how about acknowledging autumn as a time of tradition? We see this in nature with hibernation, as reflected by this design from John O'Lantern, who gives us Ursaring. This autumnal variant seems to be fully in hibernation mode, a state where many animals go into deep sleep, or at least lower states of energy for the colder months of the year. This was a very clever pick, not only because bears are obviously the most conventional pick when you think of hibernation, but also because the frills on normal Ursaring's fluffy body and shoulders translate perfectly to autumn leaves. So my redesign just plays up the elements of its design that the original artist alluded to, making its body fatter and giving it a more peaceful sleeping pose, while giving it more saturated colors closer to Teddiursa that also feel slightly more autumnal to me. I also gave it a very large ring of leaves around its neck and its tail, which I think in this pose could make this Pokemon blend in nicely as a pile of fall leaves. Perhaps that's its survival mechanism when it sleeps defenseless for all those months. To that end, this variant also lacks the claws and general sharp elements of base Ursaring. The last decision I made was to give this Pokemon a back pattern of a sun with rays, perhaps looking like a sunset. My rationale there was that a yellow ring on Ursaring looks more like a sun in midday, perhaps representing summer after the rising sun of spring, and Ursaluna feels considerably more wintry, with the moon as a primary design motif. So with the sunrise for spring, a sun for summer, and a moon for winter, it only felt appropriate to have a sunset for autumn as the transition between all these seasons. Let me know if that makes sense to you.
It's metaphorical!
Overall, I was just relieved that I was able to make a Pokemon with such a dynamic pose, while also literally being sleeping. But let me know if you like this take on the concept. Ursaring, the hibernation Pokemon. This form of Ursaring is not considered a true regional form, as it only enters this state during the autumnal season in the wild. After consuming an excess amount of berries it forages and tripling its body mass, Ursaring will enter an extremely deep slumber until the early spring, digging a cozy den in the secluded forest. The seeds from all the berries that it has consumed has grown to cover its entire body to provide warmth and camouflage during this time, the leaves changing with the colors of the season. However, because Ursaring slumbers underground or in the shade, the leaves don't photosynthesize, leaving this Pokemon with less energy than the average grass type. Similar to Komala, this Pokemon is capable of engaging in battle in the state of deep sleep, but it can be awoken with enough disturbance. Only then will this lethargic Pokemon show the fiery temper that Ursaring is known for. Now let's end autumn on a fun and warm note. How about a seasonal beverage? I've always loved food-based Pokemon, so I was delighted to see this entry from Gym Leader JC. Polteageist. This pure fairy type variant of a beloved Pokemon references the ubiquitous fall beverage, the pumpkin spice latte. Though I don't personally love the taste of anything pumpkin, I love seeing cafes, bakeries, and stores lined with the stuff, a sure sign that my favorite season is in full swing. I like the details that were added here to make this Pokemon's inhabited mug look super ornamental, like swirly eyes and almost a mustache look. I also love the warm color palette here, proof that less is truly more. So let's stick with that for our redesign, keeping everything a shade of pumpkin-y beige or orange, making that coffee mug look cozy and decorated, but my main difference here was just adjusting proportions. Contrary to the original artist, I made this Pokemon far larger than the mug. Since this is Polteageist, we want this to properly look like an evolved form, whereas the original art I think would be more fitting for a Great Sinistea variant. But that's just my opinion. So we made a much more elongated Polteageist shooting out of the mug with those crazy, hyper-caffeinated eyes. I believe this not only feels more appropriate for an evolved form, but it sells the personality better. I imagine a Pokemon made of coffee would be pretty hyper, jumping off the walls and out of its mug radically, not simply sitting calmly in its vessel. But of course, I couldn't have completed such a zany Pokemon without the original artist's efforts. Introducing Polteageist, the pumpkin spice Pokemon. This variant, commonly known as Polteaspice despite its direct relation to Polteageist, is much more energetic than its Galarian counterpart. It's said they took on this form after hiding from cold, rainy autumn weather. People travel from virtually every region to taste the coffee brew this Pokemon inhabits. It's said to invigorate and restore vitality, though consuming too much will cause a massive bout of insomnia that can last for days, and in the most extreme of cases, has caused perpetual hysteria. As always, you've provided some amazing concepts and artwork for me to use as a starting point, with nearly 3 dozen I couldn't get to for one reason or another on top of the 5 that I did redesign. It always floors me to know how this continues to grow in popularity, and I couldn't thank you enough. So as much as I want to run through each and every design, let's just point out a few honorable mentions that I came close to redesigning but didn't for one reason or another as we celebrate fall one last time. Churro Tea Nerd made the bold choice to make a fall legendary with Rayquaza. The colors on this thing are legitimately beautiful, cozy while still being radiant. I would have changed literally nothing, hence why it's not here. Thicker line work and you have a masterfully done and convincing Fakemon. Same goes for this Meowstic from Whoops, based on a black cat. A simple concept diversion and color swap that feels entirely realistic for something that Pokemon would do. I would be surprised if we didn't get something like this in the future, either for a future region or Legends Kalos. More food, you say? The Puff drew up this Slurpuff, honoring witches, black magic cake, and the state of Pennsylvania. As it said, this comes from a region bordering Unova with a chocolate factory similar to Hershey. This definitely has mascot vibes, and I love it. Volley Blue gives us Smeargle, a representation of the natural decay and melancholy of the autumn season's falling leaves, colder weather, and darkness. Wow, way to get philosophical on us in just the right way. I mean this. This is exactly what I meant when I said I wanted you to all come up with designs that represent what the season means to you. And I love how this artist came up with something that's a visual representation of their personal abstract feelings about the season. Really creative. Shield Does Pixels gives us Autumnal Snover, a pretty literal but on-point depiction of the temperature swings that certain parts of the world get, where the temperature just can't settle on autumn weather, and it alternates between summer heat and early snow day to day during these months. As someone who lives in the Pacific Northwest, I am so glad that I do not have to deal with that, but I empathize nonetheless. Very clever work. And lastly, Autumnal Moralo from Paradigm made me laugh out loud when I read the concept. It's not only based on mushrooms found in muddy forests, but also a bowl haircut, with this dejected little mushroom lamenting the bad look that it has for the new school year. As someone who's experienced that pain as a kid, I love this design so much. And this design is proof that Pokemon always has room for more low-key regional forms and type swaps like this. Once again, thank you all for making this ongoing seasonal challenge as amazing as it can be. I was hard at work plugging away at this video's artwork, alongside artwork for some other long-form and returning projects that I'm sure that you'll hear more about soon. But I hope to shift my focus to give you all some classic speculative Pokemon videos this fall at perhaps a more frequent pace than the last month or so. But again, I feel like my art has progressed a lot just by stepping back and taking a little more time between uploads. I've grown a lot as an artist, and it's all thanks to you and the amazing ideas for videos that you all give me. In the meantime, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or join the Tam Valley Discord to stay connected, see previews for all these projects, and know when the next seasonal art challenge is happening. Thank you to my patrons, especially Guardian patron Dayton Wheezy. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time for more content.